All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you might be listening from. This is Aliu Olamide, also known as Uncle Mide's Mix, and I'm here to show you my mix processes, how I process my mix. And I've actually had it in mind to do this for a very long time now. And due to one reason or the other, I've not been able to do it. But today is the day I'm gonna be doing it. So I'd like you to show some love by liking this video. Click on the subscribe button to encourage me to put out more content like this. And yeah, so I'd like you to take note of the fact that I'm doing this for just people to learn from what I do. I'm not saying I'm a pro like that, but just for people beginners to learn from. I mean, what I do. So I'm gonna be introducing the track I want to um do a tutorial on today. It's a two track, it's a jazz standard, it's a cover of a jazz standard. All of Me by, I think, is it not Billie Holiday? I can't remember who actually originally wrote the song, and I got this instrumental from YouTube. I was able to extract the audio and then use it, for my cover. So enough of the introduction for now. Let me just go straight into playing the track. I already have an exported um track which I imported back into the session, for the purpose of this video. And so also I want you to take note of the fact that we might be getting a few processor glitches here and there. That's because the processor of my laptop is not that strong, so please bear with me. So I'm going to be playing the track right from the beginning to the end now, so you can listen to it. So here.
All of me, why not take hold of me? Can't you see that I'm no good without you? Take my lips, I want to lose them. Take my arms, I'll never use them. Your goodbye left me with eyes that cry. And how can I go on dear without you? You took the part that once was my heart. So why don't you take all of me? All of me, why not take hold of me? Can't you see that I'm no good without you? Take my lips, I want to lose them. Why don't you take my arms? I'll never use them. And your goodbye left me with eyes that cry. And how can I go on, dear, without you? You took the part that once was my heart. So why not take all of me? Down,
Good. So that is the mix. Um, that's the mix we're working on today. So, now let's go straight into the processes I have on this mix. So, I'm gonna try as much as possible to be fast and not talk too much, and so that we can, um, yeah. Let's just start immediately. I'm gonna have to enable this. Yes. So, like I said before, now, um, we might be having a little glitches here and there, so please bear with me. That's my processor acting up. So, I'm going to start with saying what I do before I start mixing. Now, before I start mixing, actually, what I do, the first thing I do is I try to gain stage, and that makes me not to clip on my stereo output. And if I start to clip on my stereo output, it might be a little bit bad for my mastering, so I do not want to clip, so I could have a clean mix, and then I won't have issues when I'm also mastering. So I want to just have a good level, you know in my mix. So that was the first thing I do when gain staging. You could go online and find resources on gain staging before starting your mix. So that's the first thing I do. Now the second thing I do is that I I usually add some plugins on my stereo output. Yeah, I have the virtual tape machine, the virtual mix rack, tonal balance control. Just to this is to check my tonal balance, and I have the module set at jazz since I'm working on the jazz track. So I could have an idea of what a jazz track would, I mean, if my track is actually conforming to the jazz tonal balance. And then I have this plugin here. Actually, I do not have this for my mixes. This is just for, I think I've said this before, this is just for the software I'm using to record today, which is OBS. So I'm just going to close this. That doesn't have anything to do with the mix. So let me just start by activating the tape machine, the virtual tape machine by Slate Digital. So um, I'm not really doing much here. I didn't really touch most of the knobs. I think the only knob I touched was this 15 inches per second. Well, I just have that because it usually provides a good balance of tape warmth, and it has subtle coloration, and it retains clarity in the mix. As opposed to using the 30 inches per second, which might make the mix sound too clean, and I do not want that, for this that I'm working on. So that's that about that. And then I worked on the input and output. What I do most of the time, excuse me please. So what I do most of the time is that I just have these settings, to where it sounds good to me, and once it sounds good to me, I just leave it and I leave. Forget about all the technical stuffs here and there. Just forget about all those, and concentrate on making the mix sound as good as possible. So that's what I actually did here. So I'll move over to the next plugin. The next plugin here is a plugin by Slate Digital to um which is the a summing plugin, a virtual mix bus. Sorry, please excuse me. So this is the virtual mix bus. It's a kind of emulation of the, I think, the summer of an analog mixer. it just sounds really good to me, and I put it on my stereo output. It makes my track sounds better. I have this set as British 4K. I think this is an emulation of the SSL, and then I just control the drive, control the input and output. So that's what I basically do here. Um, okay, so let me turn that on too, and that's what I do on the stereo output. And after doing that, I come to the tracks and start mixing. So for this track, well, because I'm just going to be explaining them one after the other, what I do majorly is I try to first, do a balance between, take for example, for this track, which is a two track, I try to do a balance between the instrumental and then the vocal, and then I take it from there. So let's start from the top now of the plugin. So let me just play the vocal dry without any plugin.
Let me with
Oh, sorry, I still have this track on here. So
goodbye.
good. This is the vocal
Let
without
me with
any plugin
eyes that
except for these guys that
cry.
are here.
And how can
Let me turn these guys
I
off.
want to lose them. Why don't you take my arms?
Okay, I turned it back on. So
I'll never use.
that's the lead vocal without no processing at all. So I'm going to start with the first plugin I have here, which is also a virtual um, um, lead digital plugin. So I have the virtual channel here, and I have this set to USA. Like I said before, it's just what sounds good to me that I'm making use of. So most of the time, just focus on what sounds good to you. Let me turn it on. And after this virtual channel here, it's a summer actually. After this virtual channel, I have the preamp, the FG73. It's a preamp plugin. It just to add a little bit of saturation to my vocal, and then I have a little bit of the trim set at about 1 dB. So usually when I use this preamp, I try as much as possible not to push it too much, because once I push it too much, I actually get distortion, from the track itself. So what I do, I just leave it at, most of the time I leave it at around 12 o'clock. Let me show you an example of how it's going to sound if you overuse it. And here,
Use them and your goodbye. Let me with eyes that cry.
so you could hear the distortion is given to the vocal. Well, you could use that for creative purposes, but for this track that I'm mixing, I do not need it. So I just leave it at 12 o'clock, the default settings, and then I just pushed a little bit of gain. So now let's listen with and without the first plugin. It's just a subtle change, a subtle effect that is given to the vocal. So this is without the plugin.
And how can I want to lose them. Why don't you take my arm?
So already you could hear the warmth is given to my vocal. So let me close this and move to the next plugin, which is a pitch correction plugin, Autotune Pro. Actually, for this track, I didn't really need to do too much pitch correction. I mean, I tried as much as possible to have a good performance, and that's something I want you to take note of. When you're recording anything, your instrument, your vocal, try to have the best performance possible so that you wouldn't have to do too much processing on your tracks. So let me turn on the auto tune and you hear what it's doing.
Arms, I'll never use them.
Good. So you can see it's just putting my vocal in pitch. So yes, here are the settings I did. I have it's the input type set to low male, and then I have the key set to C, and then C the scale to major, which I usually use for most tracks. I mean here, except for some exceptions of some tracks that I might have to maybe have it at maybe minor. I use these two majorly. So but for this track I'm using the major scale settings there, and then I have my flex, my return speed set to 16. So what this return speed does, according to what we have here, it says it sets the rate at which the input audio is moved to the targeted pitch. So it kind of move, the notes in my singing to the correct pitch as much as possible. And then this flex tune, what I use this flex tune to do is I kind of use it to reduce the autotune effect that what's it called now, that autotune usually gives to vocals, which I don't really dig. Let me just play reduce this retune speed so you hear what the autotune is going to be doing to my vocals now. I'll reduce it now, so listen.
And your goodbye left me with eyes that cry.
So I do not want that in my recording, so I just turned this. I think I had it at around 64, 65 before. Yeah, that's 64. That's fine. So listen to it now with the
And
flex
how
tune
can
on.
I want
So what it does, let me play that a little bit more.
I
so you
want
can
to
hear.
lose them. Why don't you take my arms? I'll never use them.
So you can see what it does. It's kind of give makes my vocal sound as natural as possible, and it reduces the effect that the autotune gives it. So that's that about the autotune plugin. And next I have the EQ and EQ plugin. So yeah, so what I'm basically doing for this EQ plugin is I did a low cut around 70 hertz, and I gave my vocal a little bit of body, just a little tiny bit of body. It's not even up to 1 dB. And then I reduced some frequencies I do not like here around the mid frequencies, and then I gave it a little bit of air around there. And let's just listen to the effect of the Pro Q3 on the vocals.
And your goodbye
That's with the
left
EQ.
me with eyes that cry.
Without.
And how can I want to lose them. Why don't you take my arms? I'll never use them. Use them. Why don't you take my arms? I'll never use them. Use them. Why don't you take my arms?
So you could hear already the effect of this EQ on the track. So it's kind of making the track sound a little bit more cleaner than it was recorded. So let's listen to these frequencies that I brought down so you could hear it. It has that honky pipey sound. You could hear that. And this. So I do not like those frequencies, so I just had to drop them. And then this kind of reduces the rumbles that I might have, any rumbles that I might have in the vocal. So that's that about that. And let's move to the next plugin, which is a compressor, a 2A compressor. I really like this Slate Digital 2A FG2A compressor because it kind of adds grit to my vocal, and then it adds a little bit more warmth to my vocal. So let's just listen to the effect and hear how it sounds.
And your goodbye left me with eyes that cry. And how can I want.
So you could hear all the consonants came out more when, of course, there is a level change, because that's because I added a little bit of gain with the compressor, but I could decide not to add gain here.
I want to lose them.
But I just
Why don't you take my arms? I'll never use them.
So you could already hear, and then it's kind of helping me, control the dynamics of the vocals. Take for example somewhere around here. Let's see. So it kind of brings down the louder parts and brings up the lower parts. So without the compressor now, let's listen to this section of the music.
Left me with eyes that cry.
So you could hear left me with eyes that cry. So once I activate the compressor, you hear left me with eyes that cry. Creates a balance with the audio track. So here, let me turn it on now. So listen.
Let me with eyes that cry.
So you could even see, you could see the needle moving more at left. That's because it's trying to reduce that, recognizing that as the loud part of the signal, and then bringing up this other lower part. So let's listen again.
Let me with eyes that cry.
You can see that it's working. It's not working as much as it was working when it was at around this left. So that's what the compressor is doing for me. Let me close this and move to the next plugin, which is RDSR by Waves. So what this Waves RDSR is just doing is that it's cutting it's helping me reduce the sibilance in the music, in my vocal, sorry. So let's listen without it now, and then we'll listen with it. Let's use the left me with ice, the S in the ice. So pay attention to the S in the ice.
Let me with eyes that cry.
Did you hear that? Ice.
Eyes that cry. Eyes that cry.
Good. Now let's listen with the DSR, and let's listen to the way it controls the S in the ice.
Eyes that cry.
Did you hear that? It's a little bit more control.
Eyes that cry.
Good. So that's what's basically what the RDSI is doing here. It's just helping me, drop sibilance in my vocal track. So let's move to the next plugin. The next plugin, which is a Pro Q3. So what I'm doing in this Pro Q3 basically is, I think the vocal now started sounding a little bit dull, so I dropped a little bit of 200 with the dynamic processor in this Pro Q3. And then I was still hearing some other frequencies I do not like here, and then I gave it a little bit of shimmer that the DSR might have taken away. I don't know if that makes sense to you. So let's just listen straight with the plugin activated, and then I'm going to deactivate while it's playing.
I want to lose them. Why don't you take my arms? I'll never use them.
Without.
And you're goodbye. I want to lose.
Sorry, that's my processor.
Why don't you take my arm
so
to lose
this without
them?
it.
Why don't you take my arms? I'll never use them. I want to.
Good. Now let's move over to turning this on, and let's listen now with it.
To lose them. Why don't you take my arm?
So you could hear the effect it's giving. It's making the vocal sound a little bit more crisper and cleaner. So the next plugin I have on the chain is the Abbey Road saturator by Waves. So this plugin is not really doing much. In fact, when I turn it on and bypass it, you might not really hear difference between, when it's turned on and bypass. So you're just adding a little bit of saturation to my vocal. So now let me play from here now.
To lose them. Why don't you take my to lose them? Why don't you take my arm?
You could hear the effect. It's giving it this beautiful saturation that I really like, that it adds to vocals that I mix. So this is without it.
I want to lose them. Why don't you take my.
So with it.
I want to lose them. Why don't you take my arm?
I just really love the way it sounds, It just makes the vocal sounds more compact, if that's the right English to use. So now let's go to the next plugin. The next plugin I have here is another RDSR, instance of RDSR. So what it does is just makes my vocal sound a little bit more rounded. I learned this trick from DJ Swivel. Shout out to DJ Swivel for sharing this trick with the world, for people like us to learn from. So instead of this mode now, I made use of this mode, and then let me just
arms, I'll never use them.
Sorry, it's not turned on here.
And you're goodbye.
So that's the frequency I'm kind of so I'm trying to, make the vocal sound a little bit more rounded and controlling the, around the high, mid, high frequency, just to make the vocal not to sound as harsh. Yeah, so listen now without it.
To lose them, why don't you take my arms?
So now with it now.
I want to lose them. Why don't you take my arms? I'll never use them.
It just makes the vocal sounds a little bit warmer, a little bit rounder, and reduces a little bit, just a little tiny bit of harshness. You can see that it's even hardly working. And you see, it's hardly working.
And your goodbye.
So that's what that plugin does there. So that's all about the inserts that I have on this channel. Then let me just freeze it and move to. So this will take a little while. Let me just freeze it and move to the send effects that I used, like the reverbs, the delays, and the parallel compression. That will take a while. Okay, so some people might be wondering why I did that. That's just to reduce a little bit of, workload on my processor. So it froze the insert, so I can't have control over it any longer. But so now it starts playing more like as an audio. So let me just close that and move to what next I have. Okay, before I go to the send, I think I did another EQ move here. When I mix, most of the time I mix, with the I mix the vocals with the instrumental tracks, just to have a balance. So sometimes it might not sound good when it's been soloed, and when it comes with the when you play it with the rest track, the instrumental track, you have that nice balance. And so that was what I did here. So I think while I was mixing, it was not still sounding balanced with the instrumental track, so I just had to still do a little bit of DPA around 200. So now let's listen.
I'll never use them.
Turn it
And
on
your
now.
goodbye left me with eyes that cry. And how can I want to lose them. Why don't you take?
So that's basically what I did there. Let's not waste too much time on that. So the next thing I did after adding all the insert effects was I added a parallel compression to the track. So we have it here as lead vocal. I saved it as, the parallel compression as lead. I renamed it as lead vocal. So what I'm using for a parallel compression here is the CLA76. I really like the grit it gives to the vocal, and it just makes my vocal, cut through my mix most of the time. So let's listen first with the plugin, and then we'll listen without. So you hear the effect of, the plugin is giving. It kind of brings out the emotion, the breath in my vocal. You feel what I'm singing more, with this parallel compression. So
Take my arms, I'll never use them. And your goodbye left me with eyes that cry.
So you could hear more of the consonants come through, from the lead vocal, as opposed to when it's bypassed. Listen.
and how use them. Why don't you take my
This without it.
arms? I'll never use them.
So with it now.
Use them. Why don't you take my arms? I'll never use them.
So what I have basically here is that I have the input set, and then I have the release and the attack to set, fast attack and a slower release, set up for this compressor, this CLE76, and then I have the inputs just set. You know, most of the time what I do is I just overuse the plugin and then I blend it in later, just to have a good balance between the vocal and the parallel compression. So let me show you where I blended it in. So you can see this here. So take for example, if I have it at 0, you hear that it will be too much.
Cry, and how can I?
So that's a little too much. So I have it set at around 24.2, 24.1. So this is
I want to lose them.
so that's where I wanted to have it for this mix. And then I moved over to having my reverb set. So reverb for my lead vocals. So what I'm basically doing for the reverb is I actually have a neo verb from Isotope. Yes, so what I had here was I just turned on the plugin and I left it the way it was because I liked the way it sounded. Remember, use your ears and listen to what sounds, good to you, and then just go with that. Go with your guts, go with your instincts. So, yeah, I have the pre-delay set at 16 triplet, and then I have the dry to wet settings. I have it set at totally wet. That's what I do mostly for this plugin. Usually when you open the plugin, you have it somewhere around here. So, but I usually just push it to the max, and then I tend to control it from inside the track itself. As you can see, I do not have it max around. Sorry, here. I do not have it max around here, so I just have it set around minus 10.3 dBs. So and then I use the reverb EQ, the reverb EQ here, to control the reverb sound. So I cut a little bit around 10k, and then cut some lows, just to have just not to have how do I say this now? Not to have the reverb in just to create a little bit of clarity, clarity for the from on level of between the reverb and the lead vocal. And then I I cut some mid frequencies here to just to make it sound clearer and better. So that's what I did here. And then as you can see also, I have some cuts here also around the low mid frequency with my stock EQ. But now let's listen without the stock EQ cut. Let's just listen to the reverb.
Why don't you take my arms? I'll never use them.
Yeah, it sounds really good to me, man. The reverb sounds really, really good to me. So let's listen without the EQ, reverb EQ.
Why don't you take my arms? I'll never use them.
So with the reverb EQ now.
Arms, I'll never use.
So you can see the reverb doesn't interfere much with the vocal.
You take my arms,
with the EQ turned
I'll
on.
never use them.
Sorry, that's my processor. That's a processor glitch. So that's what I did there. And then I went on. I discovered that the reverb was also interfering with my the lead vocals low mid. So I decided to cut around there too.
And your goodbye.
You just have it there and sounding all good and not interfering with the vocal. And then after that I did a sidechain compression, just to duck the reverb anytime the lead vocal sings. So I used the Pro C2 by Fat Filter to do that. And let's listen to the effect of the Proceed 2 working, ducking the reverb.
Let me with eyes that
Let me just turn this off so we can
cry.
listen
And
without
how you take my arms, I'll never use them. And
can you hear? So it kind of duck the reverb, and so we have more of the dry signal of the vocal coming out, and then the reverb. The reverb is not overpowering the lead vocal. So that's what I had there, and then after that I had the lead vocal delay. And what I usually use for the lead vocal delay is this H delay by Waves. So usually what I do first is that the analog settings, I turn it down totally because it makes one word noise which I do not like, and hisses which I do not like. And then you already have the tempo set, which doesn't make you to have have to come here and do the reverb or delay calculation. 60,000 divided by 125 then divided by 2 to get to get the BPM of the BPM to align with the BPM of the delay to align with the BPM of the music. So that's one beautiful thing that this plugin does. It already sets it for you. And then I have the decay set to the delay set to 16 bits. And then I usually like to activate this ping pong, just to have it's the delay going between the left and the right ears. I really like the effect it gives to my vocals. So let's listen to the effect of the delay. And before I play, also I want to show you that I also have a low cut here, just for the low of the delay to not interfere with the low of my vocal. I don't know if that makes sense to you. So let's just listen with the delay.
And your goodbye left me with eyes that cry.
So you can hear it has a very subtle effect, but you could hear it ping ponging between the left and the right ear.
And your goodbye.
Let me exaggerate it so you hear the effect. This is 19.3. I think 19.3. Okay. So let me exaggerate it so you hear the effect.
Let me with eyes that cry.
Good. So you could hear that. Sounds really good to me. So let me take it back to where it was. 19.3. So that's 18. Good. So I have it set to where it was before I decided to exaggerate it. So good. So that's what the lead vocal delay is doing there. And then lastly on the sends, I have general reverb. Now what I use for this general reverb is that I send it to all the tracks in the session, just to make sure that just to have the tracks sound like they're being played in the same hall, in the same space. I don't know if that makes sense to you. So I have the general reverb. I have the was it Valhalla vintage reverb, and I set the decay time to 2.21 seconds, and I leave this at the default settings, 20 milliseconds. That's the pre-delay, and then I do a little bit of what's it called now, reverb. I said reverb EQ settings here, just to clear up the low and the high, because I'm still going to be sending this to the general reverb to the instrumental track where you have the bass guitar and the what's it called now, kick drum. And so I do not want those to get into the reverb, so that's why I just cleaned it up by cutting the lows in the on the reverb, and then cutting some highs, so that it will not interfere with the highs too in the music. And then I have some cuts here to around the low mid frequencies. So let's listen to how the general reverb sounds with the lead vocal. I just have a little bit of it here. I didn't really want it, but I just wanted to have that feel of it.
And how can I want to lose them. Why don't you take my arms? I'll never use them. I want to lose them. them? Why don't you take my arms? I'll never use them.
So you could hear it just a very subtle effect. So let me turn off the old effects that I've added, and let's listen with and without the old effects.
I want to lose
This is just a dry vocal.
them. Why don't you take my arms? I'll never use them.
Good. So now with the effects.
Lose them. Why don't you take my arms? I'll never use them.
Good. So we have that there already set up. So I think I'm through with the lead vocals. So let me just go straight into the instrumental. Let me disable this and then go straight to the instrumental. So here's the instrumental, which I got from Seymour. I'm not sure I can remember that name now, but let me just check it. Seymour Simons. Okay, good. So now let's listen to. I'm gonna turn off all the effects I have on the track, so we could listen without all the effects. So this is just the effects. I mean, this is just the instrumental without any effects. Okay, good. So let me just go straight to what I did. So on the stock EQ of Cubase, I have low mid. I have the low mid cut, a low mid cut around 200, and then I have a boost around 73 hertz. So now let's listen with the EQ, with and without the EQ, that EQ change that I did there. That's with the EQ. Without now. With. So you could hear it, just a really subtle change that it gives to the track. So I'll come in here to the only EQ plugin I have on the instrumental track, which is a FabFilter Pro Q3. So what I'm doing basically here is that I'm adding brightness to the track, and then I'm doing a little bit of processing here, which I'm going to explain later after playing. So let's just listen to it with the EQ plugin. Without now. With. So as you can hear, it brightens up the instrumental track. So what I was basically doing here was that when I listened to the track, the piano was a little too loud for me. So I just wanted to bring down the piano, and this is just a stereo track. So I mean, I could not have control over the piano separately as maybe a multi-track or a single track. So what I did here was I just tried to take note of where thank God the piano was panned to the left. So thankfully the piano was panned to the left, and so I have the dynamic processor set at left, more like a mid-side processing. So I did a side processing, but just the left side. I processed just the left side, and then I took note of where the frequency the piano is much dominating, and then I decided to drop from there, to drop the frequency around there. So let me just solo this that frequency so you can listen to that. Okay, let me just play. So you can hear, so that's where the piano is mostly dominating. So I just had a cut around that frequency. So now listen without the EQ now. So immediately it brings up the piano, and now with the EQ, it drops the piano. So I got what I wanted. So that was it. So, and then the last thing I did here was to add my general reverb, the one I sent to my lead vocal around here. Where is it now? Oh, I disabled the track already. I sent it to the lead vocal too. So let me just enable it so you can see what I'm trying to talk about. So here, can you see a general reverb? I have a general reverb there, and I also have it sent to this place. So it kinds of make them, to sound like they are playing in the same hall, in the same space. So yeah, that's basically all I have. So let's just listen to both of them together with the effects. And let me see if I can disable the effects, and then you listen to the difference. So here.
Them. Why don't you take my arms? I've never used them. And your goodbye left me with eyes.
Good, that was with the effects. So let me just turn off all the effects I used. Turn this off too. Oh, I have to kind of unfreeze this, so I could disable the insert effects too. So this without the effects.
That cry, and how can I want to lose them.
So with all the
Why don't
processing,
you take my arms? I've never used them. And your goodbye left me with eyes that cry. And how can I want to lose them. Why
without
don't you take my arms? I've never used them.
With.
And your goodbye left me with eyes that cry. And how.
So that was all I did on this track. So if you like what I just did now, please make sure to like, to subscribe, and share this content. And this is just to encourage me to drop more content like this. Thank you, and catch you next time. Bye.